Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. We got a little bit of a toy video today. Let me move those a little bit. There we go. We're showing off some of the new figures that have come out for McFarlane's Super Powers line. So figures done in the same style as Kenner's Super Powers figures back in the 80s. Now, did I need to start collecting some new figures? No, I did not. However, as I have explained to my wife, it's not entirely my fault because in the last, wave that came out, we got Blue Beetle with his bug. And I'm a big fan of Blue Beetle, and in fact of the Justice League International in general. And the toy box, and you notice I also have a little interloper in here, a little visitor from Marvel Comics, Tony Stark. The box art showed what was very clearly Booster Gold sitting next to the Blue Beetle in the bug. Well, love me some Blue Beetle, love me some Booster Gold. Knew I was going to have to get those. And like all toy people, okay, well, I can just stop at those two. Or I guess I could start sort of collecting the Justice League International. Yeah, I'll do that. Why not? So, if you don't know, the Justice League International really started out as Justice League. It went through a couple different name changes. It was a superhero comic book that was also pretty darn funny and did surprisingly well. You got a spinoff, Justice League Europe. You got Justice League Quarterly, a few annuals. It kind of became a little miniature, empire all its own within the DC universe, and kind of revitalized the concept of the Justice League and the idea of having, some funnier stories. And they did this sort of pose a few times as the league expanded. And that was Justice League Europe doing their bit. There we see Metamorpho. So big fan of those comic books. It was the first Justice League comics that I ever bought. And I just couldn't resist when these came out. So I've already shown off Blue Beetle and the Bug in an earlier episode, or an earlier video, I guess I should say. I don't really have episodes. And so let's take these dudes off card and give them a look-see. But before we do, let's take a look at the card art. So we have Booster Gold, an early favorite of mine when I started collecting comic books back in, the mid-1980s. I got Booster Gold #1. I was real excited about that. You can see what the back looks like with all the different figures they have, some of the different vehicles. A lot of great figures, really, and believe me, it's a temptation to get more of them. I'm trying to basically stick to that Justice League International and just get a few from that particular comic book. We also get a little bio of Booster Gold here. So, it's not like super amazing box art or card art, but it's effective, it works, and I like the image they have of the different heroes. Here we have Gardner, the obnoxious Green Lantern, who sort of became a fan favorite despite himself. And the same basic idea on the back. And then we have Metamorpho, an older character who's shown up a few times and showed up a bit in Batman Brave and the Bold, if I remember correctly. The cartoon I'm referring to here. I think maybe also the comic book. But and he was part of Justice League Europe specifically, but always a fan of his design, of the colors, etc. So had to bring him in to the fold as well. And we're going to have a special guest star here in just a moment as well. So we're going to have a little cut here while I decard these little fellas. Okay, and we are back with our little action figures. So let's take a look at each of them. First, you get Guy Gardner here. It's a good sculpt. We got the bowl cut. It's the classic costume from those Justice League International and I think Green Lantern Corps days. I think it was the same costume. A great character. You know, sadly, he was... I mean, he's actually a character who has brain damage, which is why he acts the way he acts. He's not necessarily a complete jerk on his own. He's kind of revved up. And sadly, oftentimes used just to sort of, well, let's just say own the chuds. And like Alex P. Keaton, turns out to be pretty popular as a result. But he's actually a well-written character, and he's got more depth than people might think. He was a good addition to the Justice League. Introduced a lot of conflict. Booster Gold's another character who, over time, I think has been sort of, in some instances, turned into a parody of himself. You know, he was this superhero who wanted to do good, but also make a nice living doing good. He came from the future and obviously was not a person who had much in the way of money. Let's get a little more light here. Let's try that. And so he oftentimes gets turned into sort of this, you know, materialistic airhead who really only thinks of himself. That's not really the Booster Gold character. And he really famously became sort of a partner to Blue Beetle within the League. They were both a couple of jokesters. They also had both suffered losing their fortunes. I guess we could show off Ted Kord again. Ted Kord was an inventor who had a corporation. He was rich. It all fell apart. He had a short-lived comic book series as well. And that was kind of the point, I think, of Justice League International was we can't use the big characters, although Batman was in there for a little while. So let's take characters people don't care that much about, whose series have maybe failed, and see what we could do with them and maybe give them more of a life than they have otherwise. Now you notice Metamorpho, quite a bit bigger than Blue Beetle. I like that. Do we have some size variance here? Metamorpho is capable of changing into any element, any shape that he wants. He's kind of a rough character, and a little reminiscent of Marvel's Ben Grimm, the Thing, in that he's stuck in this monstrous appearance. He feels like he's lost sort of his humanity, and then he's got this relationship with Sapphire, who's the daughter of Simon Stagg, who's this, you know, rapacious millionaire and a jerk, and he and Rex don't like each other, and yada, 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 yada. Guess we could do a little bit of movement here. You see they bend at the knees. Hip joints do not want to bend. There we go. That one went. You know, whenever you get these things fresh out of the package, there we go. You got to loosen them up a little bit. So all characters that I enjoy in the comic books happy to see them being released. Obviously, there's quite a few more who I want to see released. Maybe we can bring that image back up that we had before. Let's go back to the first one. I'd love to be able to get all of these characters. Now, Kenner had a Dr. Fate, a Batman, Captain Marvel, Mr. Miracle, Martian Manhunter. They're not always easy to get with their capes at a price that this kid here can afford. Dr. Light, Black Canary in her 80s outfit would actually be pretty cool. That was the first Black Canary that I ever saw. And I remember the issue where she went back to her original costume, and I was probably like 15 and my eyes bugged out of my head. But now, as far as other characters, of course, there was a Flash in the original Kenner series. Fire and Ice would be great to get a hold of them. Captain Atom, Rocket Red. There's a few. I'd love to see more of these characters made. And given that we just got these guys, it looks like maybe they're going to be pursuing that. But as I said, a few of these were made by Kenner, and I recently managed to get a hold of one of the original Super Powers figures that I needed for my Justice League International. John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, had the cape. The price was really good, and so I couldn't resist. And I kind of like that he was one of the original Justice League founders and Silver Age Justice League. I kind of like the fact that not only is he a really much older character than the others, but he's an older figure as well. But I'm a nerd. It's what we do. It's how we think. So let's get a look at him. But I was also really happy to get this because I didn't have any of these figures when I was a kid. So I didn't know quite how, we'll use him maybe as an example, how these new figures stacked up with the old. And I'd say they stack up pretty darn well. I think there's a little more detail on these. But overall, the range of movement, the knee joints, etc., it's pretty close. This guy's a little bit looser, obviously, than these new ones because he's quite a bit older, which is funny because as we human beings get older, we don't get that much looser. A little harder to move the joints. But old action figures loosen up a bit, but he's not too bad. And I think with a stand, he'll do just fine with these other characters. We'll get another good close look on him. The cape's in pretty good shape. And I figured with some of these characters, I might try to get them without the capes and sort of make my own. But I wanted to have an example of how they did them. My daughter's actually pretty good with sewing. And, it's not like she has anything to do. She's just a teacher. They just kind of, sit around all day. So obviously she has time to sew little superhero capes for her dad. Well, we'll see. So anyhow, happy to get this guy. So I am putting together my own little Justice League International little by little, with some older figures, with some newer figures. And we'll see how that goes. But I will say, about these figures, great construction. They're nice and solid. They have good heft to them. They fit in nicely with the original Kenner figures. I love the colors. I love how colorful they are. It's one of the things that saddens me about a lot of modern comics. They tend to be a little bit more drab, a little darker. I love the old days. I love the colors. And so really nice, bright paint jobs on these guys. Given that these figures are mostly going to collectors rather than actually being toys for kids to play with, the prices are really nice. I mean, they're not super complicated, but, the sculpts on these things are really, really good. Put that here. I know it's hard to get these to focus sometimes if you get a little bit too close, but it's a really, really good sculpt. So there's some time and some love and some effort goes into these figures from McFarlane, and I really respect that. So there you have it, folks. From McFarlane Super Power Collection, from the Kenner Super Power Collection, we have a few members of the Justice League International. One of my favorite comic books. I'm actually going to be reviewing those comics next year, every Monday. So happy to be able to collect a few of the characters here in this form to display in my office. There you have it, folks. Thumbs up on McFarlane Super Power Collection. Good figures, well built, nice paint jobs, nice sculpts, quality items. Excellent job, Todd McFarlane. I'm sure he did all of it personally. That'll do it for this review. What say you in the audience? Do you have any of these? Do you like them? Are there any that you want in particular for your own collection? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Maybe think about subscribing to the channel and maybe sharing with a friend. That would help me out. I really do appreciate it. Until next time, God bless everybody. Please, please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will see you again hopefully soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.